and calm the angry, and that you would bring sense to this country. Bless our national leaders and give them wisdom on how to handle these situations. Bless our town and let there be peace and calmness and safety here. We just thank you and we praise you, and we know that you are on the throne, and we ask for your glory and your grace to be poured out. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Communications?
Roll call. Communications?
Roll call.
Roll call. Roll call.
Roll call.
Anderson.
Here.
Gaston.
Here.
Clotho. Ramsey.
Here.
Russell. Here. Sahadashini.
Here.
Wolf. Here.
Reading and correcting of the journal?
I move we suspend the rules and dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Communications?
I have something. I'm on the aviation board, and we met on May 12th at 7, and they are working on having a fly-in event on July 25th, with the rain date is the 26th. They are planning to have food vendors, local artisan booths. The Huey organization is supposed to be there. They also will continue to offer their $15 airplane rides for interested people. They received a CARES Act grant for $30,000 for the airport expenses. And the FAA told them that the $370,000 grant was 100% covered now. They don't have to have matching funds for that. And that is for use in electrical rehabilitation of the runway. And they are also working towards having fuel for small jets and updating the fuel credit card pumps and readers. Also, I am on the Historical Society and the 911 dispatch, and they were canceled due to COVID.
Thanks, Pat. Kathleen is not going to be with us tonight. She's got some stones that she's trying to pass. Also, information for the council. We have 2 representatives on the utility board, and one of them is retiring. I've talked with Josh is here. Talked with Josh. He said that the position will be advertised, and I thought it'd be a good idea to announce that tonight too. And the folks will be asked if they're interested to send in a letter to Susan, and we'll give folks 2 weeks after the announcement to turn their letters in, and that'll give us a couple of weeks to look over the applicants and make a decision on who we'd like to appoint to the board. We have 2 folks on the board. One of them is going to still be on the board. It's Mary Costin. She's our other representative, okay? I thought you all should know that. Any other thing on communications?
Okay, next order of business is unfinished business. Ordinance number 12, 2020. It's an ordinance of the Common Council of Peru, Indiana, authorizing the issuance of the City of Peru, Indiana Taxable Economic Development Review Bond of 2020 project, and the use of the proceeds thereof to support the YMCA project, and authorizing and approving other actions in respect thereto.
We've already considered this, haven't we?
Yes.
Okay, so we can have discussion on this. Jim, I've gotten several things from you, and I haven't had a chance to get through all of it.
Okay.
But I need some time to do this. I mean, I'm being asked to vote on something and I haven't been able to read through all the stuff.
Okay.
I
I had a
have
question
questions
for Jim,
too.
too. Can we take it today, or?
All right. I mean, I can go ahead and answer questions. I mean, where you're at in this process is last meeting, we presented ordinance 12 for your initial review and consideration. And so you approved it on its first reading. And so tonight, we brought the ordinance back for its second reading and hopefully approval. Again, we had sent out, in addition to that ordinance 12, what's called a trust indenture agreement, which basically outlines a trustee that will be named to kind of act as a third party to kind of oversee the disbursement of the bond proceeds to the project, and then also be the recipient of the payments that would come from Makita to be placed to serve as principal and interest payments on the debt over a period of time. Then there is also the financing agreement, and that is basically between the city, the Makita, and the YMCA, that basically just outlines how the funds are to be used and for what purpose, and how those funds are accessed, and kind of lays out those roles and responsibilities. To help me answer any questions you might have tonight, I'd like to introduce one person that's here in the audience, and that's Rich Starkey, who Rich serve as bond counsel, or is serving as bond counsel. And also, I don't know if she is able to join us or not, and that is Heidi Amsbaugh, who is from Baker Tilly, who did kind of the analysis on the TIF to make sure that we had adequate revenues coming into the TIF fund to be able to support the principal and interest payments on the project. So with that, can go ahead and entertain questions.
Yeah,
Peter?
Jim, what I remember vividly from the meeting we had with Betsy, myself, and Mark, you stressed that the city of Peru would not be under obligation to repay the bonds. My question is, well, then who is going to be responsible?
It is solely pledged through the TIF revenues that are generated from the allocation areas or the various TIF districts that are throughout the city. So again, as we explained before in some of the meetings that we had with the council members, when you set up a TIF district, the base assessed value within that district is frozen. What's captured then in what's called the allocation or the TIF area is any increase in assessed value that is due to investment, construction that occurs within that TIF. So that's what we're talking about. The base assessed value will continue to go to the normal taxing units, like the city, the schools, and those kind of things, as you would have normally received. What then is captured is that those real property taxes that are paid into the TIF. So that is a set amount based on that increase of assessed value every year. So as those funds are collected and paid to the Economic Development Authority, acting as the redevelopment commission for the city, we then are responsible for using those TIF funds to pay that bond.
Okay, so where is the tax revenue coming from then? The actual properties where?
Again, it's like from the new increase in assessed value. So if you take an example, the new 106,000 square foot building that Horaeus put up. If you look at the expansion that Western Marine did, if you look at Casey's General Store, there was, at least with Horaeus, and Caterpillar, Western Reman, or Progress Rail, they're all the same company, just at different time frames. There was a base assessed value. When they made those increases and made those improvements, that increased the assessed value. So the taxes that they pay on that new assessed value, on that increase, go into the TIF fund, which then we are obligated by this agreement and by the bond to pay those principal and interest on the bond using those TIF revenues. So they're paid by taxpayers, mainly the industries and the businesses. Residential is not included in a TIF. So any increase in residential property is not collected on the TIF. That stays with the taxing units. It's only those businesses and industry that invest in their property. That increase in assessed value equals taxes that are paid on top of the base, and that's what's collected in the TIF that we use to satisfy the debt service.
What if we don't collect enough? What happens?
Well, those are all taken, that's the same thing if the city doesn't collect its taxes.
Yeah.
We're assuming that people are going to pay their property taxes. They're obligated
Right.
to pay those property taxes.
Yeah. Okay, who is you said that the trustee would be named? Who is the trustee going to be then?
The trustee, if you receive the latest document that I sent out, the trust indenture agreement,
Yeah.
is a trustee that's been recommended by Rich Starkey, the gentleman out of Oklahoma.
Well, he's in Indianapolis.
He's in Indianapolis, but he's with
Bank
the
of Oklahoma.
Bank of Oklahoma. That acts as the independent third-party contractor. And
Is that BOKF,
BOKFNA, I think, is the correct
Bank of Oklahoma?
initials.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would like to ask a question to the council. Have any of you had the chance to read all this stuff that we've got?
Not all.
That's a lot of material.
I've tried,
A lot.
Jim, I haven't had enough time to go through all of this stuff. I don't want to be the one to wreck this thing. I need time so I understand what's going on here. And I haven't read anywhere where our clerk is involved in any of this. Is she supposed to be involved in this?
Well, yes, sir. She is, and she has been provided copies of the documents. Basically, the documents lay out the process. Local council has been involved in this as well, and I would ask him to add any comments that he may have.
There are a few
but-
things on the bond that concern me. If you look on page 10, it says principal amount $1,330,000.
Mhm.
Well, on the other page is $1,400,000. Why is there a difference?
That's simple. When you issue a bond, you do it not to exceed. The council would approve financing up to 1.4 million. The anticipated amount would be the 1.33. But
Okay.
interest rates vary and whatnot. Same thing we did with the utilities bond that we just went through. We approved up to 4.4, sorry, and we took actually almost the full amount, but unfortunately.
Also, page 11, it was $100,000 for the denominations of the bonds, and now it's $1,000. Why is the difference?
That's because, well, first of all, Richard Starkey with law firm of Barnes and Thornburg. That's because we anticipate that a bank will buy this bond, and we want to make it as simple as possible so that they don't have to have 100,000 denominations. It can be down as low as 1,000. So they wanted to have a bond of 1,333,000, they could do that.
Okay. Then on page 18, there's a concern to me about the company is the YMCA, right?
Correct.
For the payment of such fees, costs, or expenses other than costs, and shall be made by the trustee only upon the written order of the company. So that means the company goes to the trustee and asks for money, and we don't have any say in it.
Yeah, if you look on Exhibit A in the last document, it has the approval of the Miami County Economic Development Authority, acting as the agent for the city.
I have not got that far. I got this.
That's the problem I'm having. I haven't had a chance to go through all of this, and I'm being asked to vote on something, and I haven't had a chance to read all the stuff.
We got it on
Continue
Saturday.
tabling? Should we continue tabling?
I don't know what to do here, because I don't want to be the one to wreck this thing, but I haven't had a chance to read all of it, to make an honest vote on this.
Yeah.
I want to see it go, because we need this new YMCA. I think it's going to be a benefit to our city, but I want to make sure everything's correct here. And where I'm coming from, when we were doing the tax caps, our representatives did not read all of the materials, and they voted for it without reading the materials, and I want to know what I'm doing there. I don't know about the rest of you, but that's how I feel about this, and and the stuff's been sent to me here at the last minute to go through, and I've been told, this is a change? What's changed? You know,
It's been really tedious to go through the changes and try and figure out which one's what. So.
Jim, this is nothing against you,
Table it.
but this last minute stuff's getting me.
Well, I don't know. There are certain things that, we provided the original documents, and there were certain things that changed when we put the trustee in. The major thing between the first indenture agreement that you received and the second one was that we named the trustee. The second thing that we did, and we've always talked about this, is having a debt reserve fund. So out of the proceeds of the grant, there would be $100,000+ that would be put into a trust or into a debt reserve fund to be used just in case, for whatever reason, don't know what it is, there wasn't adequate funds to pay the principal and interest on the bond in a year. So you have a debt reserve fund. So that was added in that new trust indenture agreement. And then the third thing that basically changed in that was because we had said that the city is not obligated in any way responsible for the payment or the bonds other than the name of the city and issuing the bonds, we added that Makita is responsible for performing all of the acts that are required by those agreements on behalf of the city as the redevelopment commission. Those were basically the three things that changed in that indenture agreement.
Well, with that too, Jim, it took our clerk treasurer totally out of the equation. This is a bond that the city has to sign for. Therefore, you should have checks and balances back with the city and with our clerk treasurer instead of just crossing her out and making you totally responsible. And that's a copy I just got Friday evening.
Okay. I don't know what to say other than either that you want to be involved or not. So if we want, we can go back to the way the clerk treasurer and pay it back to the way it was. The clerk treasurer signs off on all of the requests for disbursement and those kind of things that were back in the original bond.
Well, another thing on there, I didn't see anywhere for the $400,000 walkway.
It's right in the ordinance. It's spelled out right in the agreements that this is $700,000 for the project, $400,000 for the walkway. I mean, it's in the documents at least 2 or 3 times.
Okay, it's on page 11.
Could I ask a question?
Break it down.
Because I've had 3 copies sent to me, I only brought 2 down. Which one are we talking about? Because this is the one I just got this morning, which is the red line. This is the one I got Friday evening.
I never sent you a copy of the red line, so I don't know where.
Dustin gave me that because I
Okay.
said, what are the changes? And he said, you didn't get the changes? And I said, if I did, I'm having to go back to the third copy I didn't bring down to figure out what changed in here. So he sent this to make it easier for me to figure out what the changes are, but this says 1,330 with a trustee name. The latest has no trustee name, and it's 1.4 million. So that's why you're confusing everybody. There's no consistency.
If you went by the dates that were on the email, you would know that that one that you just referred to with the trustee's name is the most recent one.
Well, the email I got was this morning.
I didn't send that one.
Yeah.
So
So I never got that one, to have the email.
but that one, if that is the red line copy, explains every change that was made from the first one that you've got
Yeah.
that was incorporated in the 1.3 million with the trustee
Nobody's had any
name.
time to go through and figure out what exactly they're agreeing to. That's the confusion.
But this was set back last week.
Yes, but we got this a week ago, just this weekend.
And
I have to read it if I'm gonna say yes.
If the council wants to table it for another 30 days, that is definitely your prerogative.
I want to read through it really good and have my questions answered by Dustin.
I had another question, Jim, okay, if you've designated a trustee of the Bank of Oklahoma, right? Okay, so now, I'd like the clarification, then what is the role of the city of Peru in this? What is our role?
I'll try to say,
I can try to.
Maybe
The
Dustin.
city's role in this is pretty much just be the issuer of the bond. I mean, we're signing the documents. The city has no general liability to repay the bonds. That's going to come from Makita.
Right, no, Jim explained that. Yeah.
Right. Pretty much, we're just the ones whose names the bonds issued in. We have no obligation to repay that.
Yeah,
Makita can't issue the bonds directly themselves, so.
right, I
that's
think Jim
why.
explained that to you. Okay,
And that's pretty much the city's role in this, just here's the paper, sign it, and let the other people, let Makita and the Y, everything move forward.
yeah.
So I don't understand by the council, what's everybody's concerns? If we have zero liability for this loan, why are we worried about not signing it and moving the project forward? I mean, we've got attorneys sitting here saying that the city's not held accountable for any of this money. Why are we going into it so deep to find something that's not there? We're still not going to be liable for it no matter what. That's what the attorneys are taking care of and just confirming to all of us.
So,
And that's one of the reasons why when the bonds are actually sold, it'll be at a higher interest rate because the debt's less secure than what it would be if the city was issuing that debt. It's payable solely by TIF revenues. And it's not general obligation pledge or anything like that.
Yeah, the reason I stood up first time was to answer your question about what happens if there isn't enough TIF revenues. First, there's what we call coverage. There's like a couple 100%, which means for every dollar of debt service that's due on the bonds, we have $2 of TIF expected to come in. If for whatever reason, a tornado went through and destroyed all the assessed value, the first line of defense is that we have this debt service reserve fund that will be enough to pay for at least 1 year of bond payments. And then after that, there is no liability. It's only TIF, so it would not come back to the city.
Okay.
but we're going to vote on this and it's not complete?
So the ordinance that you're adopting adopts a form of that, but we can't complete it till after we get the bids back from the banks, giving us the real interest rates and all of that. So that's why there's blanks in that document to be filled in once we get the bids in from the banks.
Okay, so in order for the bank to do that, we have to pass it.
Correct.
And again, the specific details, that's why it's not to exceed the 1.4 million, because we don't know exactly what it's going to come back as. And those are the numbers that interest rates and the whatnot, those are what get inserted later. And again, it's not to exceed, so there's going to be some blanks in there that need to be filled in later. And again, it's no different than any bond we've issued with the utilities, no different than the general obligation bond that the city did last year. There are blanks left in that.
Could there be a part added to where Susan got to see what was happening?
Well, I mean, everything's going Susan's gonna have to sign off, Susan and the mayor are gonna have to sign off because the city's the one issuing this bond, so she should see what's going on.
But this is money that the clerk doesn't have control over, correct? So like her seeing it and having her pay bills that come in, what would be the purpose of that? It's not the city's money, it's coming through
Then
the
why are
tip.
we liable for the property?
We're not.
We're not, we're just
We have to pay for the
naming
insurance.
where the,
Well,
We are liable for the property,
because we're liable in
property?
the sense of,
the CX property, the whole
We're-
CX.
but then we're mixing apples and oranges there. That was part of the development agreement between the city council and Makita that was entered in December. I mean, part of the agreement was that the city would still carry the general liability policy on that.
Until
It's transferred.
we transferred it. So I expect, hopefully, by the time we can issue the property or deed the property over to the Y.
We will no longer be liable?
That you, next, once we describe the trail, the easement for the trail, whatever that is, that comes out. And then, like I said before, we have 2 developers that are interested in putting housing on that property. So as soon as we can get the other 2, we can start working proposals on potential housing development down there on the additional 20-plus acres and transfer that over. So hopefully, if everything works right, the exposure to the city through the liability, covering the liability insurance could be done in a year.
Okay.
I wouldn't be opposed, taking Tom's view. I mean, there is an awful lot of stuff here and making sure that we dot all our i's and cross all our t's. The 30 days extra would not make that big of a difference if we extend it.
Especially since you really can't do
I
that.
mean, we want,
what it's gonna change though, no matter what's in that document, we're still not liable no matter what.
yeah, I understand that.
I mean, we can read through it for 6 more weeks and
Yeah.
not understand it, but we're still not liable for it if we vote to be named on this.
Yeah.
I don't understand what the concern is of the liability of the city council or the city for this matter.
Yeah, I guess-
They're taking 100%,
Right.
everything falls on them.
Yeah, I think the fuzziness maybe for me is just, is it, okay, the legality of, we got to have somebody, okay, like a driver who is underage, mom and dad signed for that driver, they're responsible, they're liable if the.
Peter, I don't know how
So-
much we can say that the city is not, you've got an experienced bond attorney here from
Okay,
Barnes and Thornburg. You've got your own city council rep saying the city is not liable.
okay. No, I understand.
I understand where you're going is,
Now,
yeah, as a
just-
kid, I'm responsible for what
Yeah,
my,
but, okay, the other question maybe you can answer, if the city's not responsible, which I understand, okay, so why come to the city in the first place? That's what maybe I don't understand.
Sure, let me explain that.
Yeah,
So,
maybe that's why.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
as you know, you have to follow certain statutes in order
Yes.
to issue debt. And the traditional statute that you've seen for issuing general obligation debt is one specific statute. There's another statute for sewer bonds, another statute for water bonds. This statute, in order to allow money to flow to a private company like the YMCA, is a completely different statute. And that statute is what you might remember, if you've been around for as long as I have, there were these things called industrial development bonds. And these industrial development bonds were bonds issued by the city to assist private companies like a manufacturer in allowing them to get tax-exempt debt. That statute is what we have to use in order to get money to a private entity like the YMCA through the city. So
Okay.
that's why we're using this statute, and it has to be a bond issued by the city, but we call this a conduit bond.
Conduit, okay.
Because the city acts as a conduit, as a pass-through.
Yeah.
It has no liability, but it has to be issued by the city in order to get the money to a private entity.
Yeah, okay, that clarifies it, then.
I have absolutely no qualms about any of that. My qualm was, I'm supposed to go through all of this stuff that's been thrown at me here, and I haven't had enough time to do it. Okay?
Well, yeah, I think you should be comfortable in voting, so.
I don't feel comfortable because I haven't been able to read all of it.
Sure, I
And it's-
completely
Jim,
understand that.
This last thing you sent, I got through about the first 4 pages, and I ran out of time. I'm sorry.
I like what you just described to me, through this. What is our role there? That clarifies it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could clarify, or I'm seeing a lot of similarities here, but I came here 10 years ago.
Okay.
And when we did the nickel plate project from Peru to Rochester, to do that project, it was over 3 million, about 4 million. And I had to get Rochester and Peru to be the pass-through. So the city, Rochester and Peru, we had all the liability. But as nickel plate trail, it's not exact, but it's close. We took all the liability, but we could not take the money, so we need a pass-through, the same as what they're doing. So they're taking all the liability as we did. And really, that's all you're being asked to do. It's just how it's structured. So it has to be through the city, but you have no, there was actually even a little bit more work at the time for the city on the nickel plate project than this one. This is even simpler because the city has no, they're doing all the work. So, I'm just kind of, from my point of view, maybe don't overthink it, but it looks complicated, but in essence, they're not all that difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that.
So it's not necessary for us to read all of it. Right?
We got homework to do, Tom.
I guess the only thing that I would add to it, and Tom, I understand what you're saying, or anybody that wants time to read the documents, but I go back to Steve's comments. Even after you've had the time to read the documents, it still doesn't change the city, then the obligation of the city. It's just not there. As Rich said, this is a conduit for the bonds to be done. We serve as the redevelopment commission for the city. Our board does. City council passed an ordinance for us to do that. We're on your side. Okay, we're not the enemy. We're not going to try to get you to pass something that we don't believe in ourselves or has not been scrutinized by the two attorneys that are here. Now, honestly, with that said, if you want to take the additional time to review the documents, to make sure that you understand what's happening and what's going on, we'll make that happen. But at the end, I don't know that it's not necessarily going to change the structure of anything because, again, the city is not obligated in any way on these bonds. But we'll do as the council asks us to do.
What are the effects of the delay? If we postpone it, table it for another month, to let everybody read it, what are we doing?
We're just adding another 30 days to it. I mean, technically, I'm hoping the process with the Y, they're reviewing bids and doing those kind of things that they recently got in. I want to move forward on writing specs, getting bid documents out for the completion of that section of the trail to start as soon as we can after October 1st. So for me to really feel comfortable in doing that, I'd like to know that there's revenue. So that just adds another 30 days on the process. But again, if that's the wishes of the council, again, we're the redevelopment commission working on your behalf. That's what we'll do.
I have a question. On the disbursements of funds, who answers and keeps track and informs the city how those funds are actually being spent from the bond?
We can do that. That's not a,
Should, or I mean, if
No, I'll
we
say
ask
we
for it,
will.
You don't want to, are you going to say there's nothing in there that says we have to provide that information to you later on?
No, actually, I believe it's the trustee, but, I mean, I can do that locally.
Okay, and this is some of the questions I've been getting. Is there a limit to where, like you say, the Y is only going to have so much of this bond?
Right.
Are you going to allow them to exceed that if they come in here and say, well, I've got this extra additional stuff coming up?
No.
Because it says you've got total control over whether they get extra money or not.
That was addressed in ordinance 12, I believe. I believe that capped the Y.
Is it capped in here? Because this
Yeah.
trust indenture, the 2 copies, I think it really muddied the waters for a lot of people.
No, basically, the ordinance identifies the amount that's set aside for each.
But,
So,
so nothing in here is going to contradict what's in here.
shouldn't, no.
So shouldn't, can't, or couldn't?
No, it won't,
It doesn't.
it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Okay, here's the offer.
Good answer. Don't tell me it shouldn't.
It doesn't.
We want to know it doesn't. Because should the Y come back and say, well, we're still going to need another $500,000. And out of that bond, and then shorten, people don't want the trail to get shortened. They want to make sure this bond money is going to go to the trail like it says.
Right.
They're not going to, because you've got the Y superseding everything in here from what it sounds like. And you should have made it more clear that it's just as important that that bond money goes to the trail as to the Y.
I'm pretty sure that.
I can tell you with certainty that we're not going to ask for anything above $700,000 as related to the stiff bond. I want the trail to go through too, as much as Mike does, because that just helps the whole property. So I don't know if that assurance is enough.
I think that's
but-
probably because, like it says, the YMCA project right on the top. And it, just like if people say, what about the trail? What about the trail?
Sure.
And-
I'm not the author of any of that. I can just tell you from the Y's perspective as the executive director, we know that $700,000 is the top, and that's all we'll ever ask for in this TIF bond.
Pick one.
I feel like Black
And we
Park
can change
here.
the name to YMCA and Trail Project,
Yeah,
too.
well, see, but then you sent this one.
I'm being asked to vote on something here and pressed to say
So
yes,
then is this what we're actually asking?
and I
for?
haven't read it all. I feel awful.
Ron has it.
I'm sorry, Ron.
That was the question. They said, well, why
If it's just
are
a
you
conduit,
asking, and then
you're
you're
supposed to just be a
asking? And like,
conduit.
I don't know. I
And
just
all
got
it is
this
a rubber
this
stamp,
morning.
then why did you even get all this information? Why wasn't it just say, hey, we need the bond, stamp it?
Yep.
Otherwise, why did you get all the information if you weren't supposed to understand it? That's-
Because it was asked for by the council. That wasn't something that was mandatory. They asked for more information, so they gave them as much information as they had.
But if I was on the council, or if I was gonna vote on something, I would want to at least know what I'm voting on.
Right, and that's what we asked for at the last month.
Yeah.
But- and
We asked for
we,
more
Get it on
information on
Friday, and
it.
then,
We voted to
you know,
table.
it's Monday.
I got all my answers at the meeting that we had with the Y Board and Makita,
Met independently with them.
there is no liability to us, so I didn't feel like I needed to go any deeper into the project.
But others did.
I'm not asking about liability. I just wanted to be able to read everything that I was sent.
Yeah, and each one, I don't want to answer your question, and Steve's, we met with every one of the council members up here and answered all their questions about the process.
Obviously not all of them, because they all got questions up there, and they're still trying
No,
to figure it out.
No, we
okay.
met. We all met.
yeah.
Yeah, but
Tell me,
No, I mean, all the questions weren't answered because there's still questions. So,
The questions have arisen because of stuff being sent. If we ever do another one of these, I have to have the stuff. If I'm going to vote for something, I want to see what I'm voting on. And you answered all my questions when we met, but this other stuff that you said, I haven't had a chance to look through it.
But aren't we only voting on permission to let the grant go through the city, not what's on all that paper?
Correct.
That's all we're voting on is permission to let them use us as a conduit. They're not asking for permission for us to go through and scrutinize their contract and try to change it to fit what.
Why do we have all this?
Can I just say that you should not vote on anything that you're not comfortable with, period. I mean, I've been doing this for 35 years, and if a council person is not comfortable, I don't want to delay the project either, but I don't want you to feel badly that you need more time.
I
okay?
feel like Black Bart.
Well, you shouldn't. I think you're doing what you need to do.
Sorry, Jim. And I just, I feel like I'm
No,
being
I
pressed
mean,
into.
again, we're your redevelopment commission. If you want to take another 30 days, I would ask you to please try to review it in the next 30 days. And please address any questions.
From what you're saying,
To me?
30 days isn't going to make any difference.
Well, it's not going to change the structure of the bond, because hopefully the city doesn't want to become obligated and liable.
Really?
So that structure of the bond is not going to change. You know, what does this mean in the agreement or that mean in the agreement? So that you feel more comfortable, yes, we can help clarify. But I would not recommend that we change the structure of the bond where the city is obligated. But I would ask is, if you do table this, which it sounds like there's a chance you're going to do that, then please review and address any questions that you have to Dustin, myself. If we can't answer them, I'll forward them on to Mr. Starkey.
Dustin, you're the guy. What do you say?
Can't do that.
Got you right.
I agree, yes. I agree with Rich here. I wouldn't sign anything I'm not comfortable with. I'd make sure I took the time to read through it. I don't think, like Steve said though, it's not going to affect the city's liability, but if the liability is not the issue you want to look for, then I think your answer is already determined.
So it doesn't make any difference.
Well, I mean, ultimately, it could make a difference. I mean, delaying 30 days could mean significant change to interest rates or what we could potentially receive back in the bids. Someone gets busy, work speeds up, can't find a contractor, obviously you're going to pick their price at that point. And I don't know what that market's like at this point, but I mean, it could have some type of effect on the project. Regardless, so like Rich said, if you're not comfortable with it, I'd table it.
I move we adopt ordinance 12.
Second.
Ready for roll call?
Roll call.
Anderson,
Yes.
Dustin,
Yes.
Ramsey,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
is Sahadashini,
Yes.
and Wolf.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry it was so difficult.
On our time schedule, timetable, we still have some days before we actually close on the bond. But if you see something, still, please read the documents. If there is something that you have a question about, please give us a call and we will clarify it through whether that's Dustin or myself. Like I said, if we can't answer it, we'll give it to Rich. I apologize for the confusion and shortness of time. And I appreciate your vote of confidence, and we'll go ahead and move forward with the project. And Susan, we will, as disbursements and payments are made, we'll send you quarterly updates on
That
what
would be
has been-
appreciated, because I think that's
on what has been
something
drawn and what has been paid. So,
yeah. I think they kind of want to follow up and be able to see where the money's actually
if
being
you-
spent.
if you'd like us to, we can come here and present that. You can present that on our behalf to the council, or if the council wants to set up something on a routine basis, we can come here on a quarterly basis and update on the progress and the status of the bond payments and stuff.
That was my only thing, is the way that read, it cut her completely out, which means that you didn't have to come back to the city and say, hey, we just made the last payment of $700,000 for the
And the
YMCA.
intent there, Mayor, was not to be withholding that. The intent was totally to eliminate more work on the part of the
I appreciate that.
clerk treasurer.
And Mr.
So-
Starkey?
And the trail,
You
make
had-
sure the trail gets very.
And it isn't just for her, because it's for the whole council.
If someone has a Bible, Pastor, do you have one? I will swear.
In my car.
Okay, or if you want to run out and get it, I will swear.
We haven't asked for that.
Okay. The trail is a part of this project.
Well, Mr. Starkey had mentioned that he could actually put that on the bond, like have it as the Y Trail project.
I'll be.
Just so there is something on there.
Hold it.
Yeah.
One of these
I
copies
did.
in here.
I changed it.
Okay.
He did change it to,
What'd you
and
say?
added that
I
up.
put YMCA/trail project.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we can do that.
Because trail's important. People want the Y, but the trail's important too.
Absolutely.
Okay, nothing else under that. We'll move on to new business. First thing under new business has already been handled by Tom Guston for review and application for the utility board vacancy. However, it has not been advertised yet, so that will be at our next city council meeting.
It'll be advertised this week, Mayor, and the cutoff date will be the 19th. So you guys will have.
What are the locations that that'll be? I know you said you're gonna put it in the paper. Are we gonna put it on like the merit page, the city's page?
Should put it on the city's page. and-
Are we allowed to like put it into like any other social media group to be able to put it out there?
You can do what you want there as far as that goes, yeah.
I'd just like to be able to get it out to where more people have an option to look at it than to say, well, I don't get the proof paper, so I didn't get an option to put my name in the hat.
Right, and it's a paid position, so it's important that we get it out to as many people as we can and make sure that we
What's
follow
the
all the
pay?
rules. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, I'm
Is it
sorry.
paid more than this?
No, I don't
I think
know.
it might be the same, Bob.
$3.80 an hour?
All right, next under new business, resolution 9, 2020.
City resolution to establish rate tracking factor for the municipal electric utility for the city of Peru, Indiana.
I move we consider resolution 9, 2020.
Second.
Any discussion? Do you have anything to say? Josh?
Is it on? Okay.
Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. This quarter, for the third quarter, will be a decrease of about $4.96 per thousand, $4.90, excuse me, per thousand kilowatts on the residential side, and $3.23 per thousand kilowatts on the commercial side. So, and really the reason for this is everything that's going on right now. Loads are down, peaks are down, and a very large charge of when we purchase power, and when everybody purchases power, is the coincidental peak for the month. So Peru is around 52, 53 megawatts. Our peak is not even close to that right now, and neither is IMPA's peak. So when the peak goes down, that charge goes down. So it's kind of spread out a little more amongst everybody. So we look to, I don't want to put my foot in my mouth here, but we look to see the next quarter equally, at least the same, which hopefully will help what's going on.
Thanks, Josh. I move we adopt resolution 9, 2020.
I second.
Roll call?
Anderson,
Yes.
Guston,
Yes.
Ramsey,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Sahadashini,
Yes.
Wolf.
Yes.
Next order of business is approval of the completed ADA transition plan submitted by Ashley Lowe. Is Ashley here tonight?
No, it looks like she's been busy.
Has all the city council got their copy of the transition plan for American with Disabilities Act?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
What do we do on this, Dustin?
Well, obviously, The ADA is always changing, the policies are always changing. I know Ashley is our ADA coordinator as the mayor's assistant. And I know she regularly attends classes and training on this. If I'm not mistaken, she's on some board or something. Yep, I'm not sure what board that is, so. She's familiar with the state's changes, the federal government's changes, and what they're recommending for municipalities and stuff. And
Do we have to take any action on it? Is this just information?
Wasn't it a resolution, or no, just
Just
approval?
approval by the city council.
Well, board acknowledgement.
I move we approve this.
Second.
agree.
Yeah,
Roll call.
just do it.
Anderson,
Yes.
Ramsey,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Wolf,
Yes.
and Haidashini.
Yes.
Okay, we had communications from Pat earlier. Any other communications?
I actually have something if you guys have time.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was like, who's talking?
I was looking.
The fat guy.
I thought God was talking.
We're all going.
Just saved us $4 a kilowatt hour. We got time.
Yeah, don't want that one.
All the time.
This is page 2. I don't know why I'm doing it this way.
Are we going to get page 1?
You are.
Eventually. Do we have time to read this?
Yeah, you don't need. You actually had a copy already.
Shut up, leave me alone.
In your bill.
I could have translated all that stuff into Ukrainian.
Thanks. You're no help at all.
Bill this month.
It should have been last bill, the last bill you got. If you got it, if you have an e-bill, you wouldn't have seen it probably, so that's why I wanted to give you the I wanted to make sure that this is page 1, that we kind of talked about this publicly, because you guys are probably going to get phone calls when the moratorium on shutoffs ends.
Ah, yes, I see.
Okay.
And give you guys the opportunity, to, back here. So in March, the Utility Service Board had the foresight, the forethought, whatever you want to call it, their crystal ball, and decided to pass a resolution on not performing non-payment shutoffs. And this was before the state said you can't do it and all that other stuff. Probably days before, but so the first page is that actual resolution. That's the unsigned copy. But so what it said, basically it says, Peru Utilities isn't going to shut anybody off. This policy will be reviewed over 30 days. When the policy ends, we're going to allow 90 days for repayment of anything that's in arrearage. We posted this on our website, we posted it on Facebook, we did all that sort of thing. We also weren't going to charge late fees. We haven't charged late fees. We have not cut anybody off since March for non-payment up until this point. And we have not compounded late fees, none of that. Now, all late fees that were before that, we maintain the same. So I believe the governor said July 1st now is when utilities can start shutting people off due to non-payment. So this policy is still in effect, and I think it was a good thing that the board did, because what it does is 30 days, that first billing cycle in July, we're going to take payment arrangements from our customers, and then we're going to give them 90 more days to pay that back, stuff that's in arrearage. You know, it's not their fault, right? These are decisions made by government that that are economically devastating to some people, to some of our residents here. So, so we're going to give them 90 days. We're going to break that up into 3 equal payments. You know, some people it's $20 in past due, and some people it's $800 that haven't paid in 5 months due to their own issues or other people's issues. You know, so that's the resolution as it stands today. Looks like all of July, we're going to be taking the payment arrangements for August, September, and October to pay the arrearage back. And as far as I know, and all my research that I've done, we're the only utility company doing this. Duke says on their page, their COVID response is, well, we'll do the best we can, basically. As states open up, we'll give you a little extra time, but that's it. I don't know what REMC is doing. NIPSCO's the same way. AEP's the same way. And the other IMPA members that I've talked to, they're not doing this either. Is this devastating to Peru utilities and what we're receiving in revenue? Absolutely. Absolutely. We have cut all of our operations down to bare minimum to make sure the power stays on, the water stays clean, and you don't have sewage backing up in your basement. We have pushed off all of our, just like everybody else, we pushed off all of our capital projects. We've responded, I think, our people have responded and the board's responded the best way they can. So the second one is actually a letter that the customers got to help them, again, last month to kind of remind them of what's going on. But we know you're going to get phone calls. We're not the big bad utilities people think we are. We care. 90 days, that's a long time to make up for almost $700,000 of people being in arrearage.
Really?
Yeah.
Will they have a payment plan?
Yes.
That's what he said.
The moratorium is lifted?
Well, once the moratorium's lifted, they'll have a payment plan. They'll have no late fees on the late fees they already have. Now, the current late fees, if they continue the current month, they'll have to pay the current month and plus a third of their arrearage.
Yeah.
And then a third, and then a third. Again, we're the only utility I can find that's doing it this way, that has it in writing, that we can't just willy-nilly change it and say, we need some money, we're going to start shutting people off. We don't want to do that. And we're still going to work with some people. Some people are significantly behind, in the thousands.
That sounds like a nice approach.
We've had a few people that haven't paid a bill since September because they were part of Project Safe. So if you're part of Project Safe, you don't have to pay. Well, we can't shut you off, but you're supposed to pay. And then you get assistance, and when the assistance runs out, then they struggle. So we're going to have to work with them, I think, a little bit more. But we're trying to do the best we can. So I know you're going to get phone calls and what the heck's going on. I didn't pay my third, so I got shut off. I don't have any money. Look, our ladies have taken a lot of abuse over the past couple months, and we're not shutting anybody off. People are scared. They don't know what's happening next. So that's okay, we'll take it. So just so you know. And then kind of a random thing here. I don't know if everybody saw the article in the paper about Duke, I think AEP, IPL, Indianapolis Power and Light, NIPSCO, appealing to the IURC and the Utility Regulatory Commission, saying, well, we're losing money, we need to raise our rates. Those are IOUs. Those are investor-owned utilities. We're not going to do that. We're not going to raise our rates because we're not getting as much revenue as we were. Now, are we going to have to put off projects for a year or two? Yep. Are we going to, it is what it is. We'll just adjust. But, so I know I've had questions. I believe a couple of our board members have had questions of, hey, what, are you guys going to go try to raise rates? And we're not an investor-owned utility. We don't have a balance sheet at the end of the year or the end of the month and say we got to pay investors. Everything we get goes to our employees and it goes back into the city. Our payment in lieu of taxes go into this physical city, but it goes back into our infrastructure in the city to provide our power, our water, and our wastewater, and our stormwater. So if you've heard that and you get those questions, call me if you have any questions on that, but that's not us, that's not what we do. We don't have investors. Our investors are the people that own the company, and that's our residents and the people of Peru. So
Thanks, Josh.
any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is your lobby open now?
Nope. We're going to open it up.
14th?
Yes, the 14th. Yes. Yep.
Anything else?
I got one thing. I'd like to, the condolences to Terry Alley. He passed away 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm basically his predecessor. And last time I saw him, he says, "You'll do a good job." So I guess I better do what he told me to do. So, condolences to his family and to himself.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, on that same line, Kathleen's father had passed away a week ago.
Sunday.
And so keep her in your thoughts and prayers too. Fire chief, do you have anything?
No, sir.
Police chief?
I had, Mayor, I just, in light of the peaceful protest on June 6th, scheduled here in front of the courthouse, are we encouraged as council, to attend that? Is this a?
I would say no.
You better stay away, you'll get stoned.
For the simple reason, a lot of peaceful demonstrators have been indulged with out-of-town troublemakers.
Okay, yeah.
I look at it on the same form as when we had the Ku Klux Klan rally.
Anarchists.
You know, I'm going to be around, but I'm not going to be visible.
Yeah.
Miles, how can you not be visible?
I plan on attending. I mean, it's going to be put on by a great group of kids that graduated last year and a great group of seniors from this year. So, I mean, we can't help if there's outside people, but I do plan on attending, and I would encourage people to show their support.
It's entirely up to individuals.
Right.
On whether or not you go.
Right. To each their own.
Just like Friday night, we had an escort through town led by the police department for all the graduating seniors of this year. I was at Main and Broadway, Susan was at Main and Broadway.
That was neat.
We did every one of them. It was awesome. The only thing different, I would have loved to have seen every Peruvian lining Main Street clear up to Kmart. There was a lot of people came out, a lot of people on North Broadway, and I could see down Main Street. And some of these kids are the ones that's putting this on now too. And although I totally am against any kind of police violence, and especially what happened up in Minnesota, I will be very outspoken. That was totally uncalled for. Not only should the one officer be dealt with, but all of them should be that was involved in that. However, with that being said, when you have several other troublemakers that come into peaceful demonstrations and start breaking windows and setting fires and, doing whatever they do, it doesn't bring any peace and tranquility to the family that's lost a loved ones or the rest of the police that are trying to do a good job at what they do.
Protect.
So when is this happening?
Saturday.
Saturday at noon.
1
I
o'clock?
thought it was at 1.
So.
At noon?
1 o'clock.
What'd you say, Betsy?
I thought it was at 1 o'clock.
One?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, is that 1 o'clock?
Yeah, 1 o'clock.
My daughter's dragging me.
Good.
I have a hard time walking.
Thanks, Mayor, for addressing that.
Thank you.
Anything else under communication?
I move we adjourn.
Well, wait a minute, I did have, if you don't.
Oh, come on, Pete.
I'm not going to second it, yeah. I had one other issue, and just because I know we have a project, we're going to repave the Main Street. Okay, has anybody, felt like those tracks on Benton crossing over? I'm just being.
Ruin your tires on that, man.
Yeah, you know what that railroad track is hideous.
Exactly, but it's also a state highway.
It's what?
Oh,
it's on the highway, Indiana 19.
Yeah.
They're technically.
You're barking up the wrong tree.
So the state is responsible for that, man?
I have also made complaints
Okay.
about other
So you're-
crossings Grant Street for one, Duke Street for another.
Okay.
Grant Street.
All of the crossings need to be
Revamped.
redone
Yeah.
or at least filled in.
So can we make our desire for that to be done known?
It's been voiced to the railroad.
Yeah, okay.
And it's going to be voiced again.
What, Eric?
Those are scheduled to be repaired or replaced this summer. We got a notice from the railroad in regards to closures on that.
Oh, okay.
There you
That's
go.
good.
See, look, you ask and it's done. You are good.
You should have asked last month.
Maybe that's the
Oh.
See that, Pete?
last month, Pete.
Wow.
Main Street is the first one to start, and I think.
Which street?
start
Well, thank you.
20 cents.
Okay, motion's been made that we adjourn.
Wait, there's somebody out there.
I second, I third, I second. I second that emotion.
I just have a real quick question, following up on what Pete said. If they're going to redo Main Street all the way down to Kelly Avenue, if they've got a few extra shovelfuls of asphalt, it would sure be nice to fix that entry into the parking lot between Papa John's and the old Kmart, and you can lose a car in those things. They've got a few extra shovelfuls of asphalt to fill in, I don't know whose responsibility it is,
Those are
Kmart
caves.
or Papa John's or McDonald's, but
They're
Yeah, those
caves.
are pretty deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
Pretty deep.
city property.
I know, but if they happen to, some happens to fall off the truck, that would be a good thing.
Well, who owns that, Mayor? I mean,
I think it's between McDonald's and Papa John's. It depends on who you talk to. McDonald's will tell you Papa John's owns it.
Miles, the county website with the GIS shows that to Kmart.
Okay.
Kmart's no longer here.
You're never gonna get an answer down.
they're out of business.
All in favor, say aye.
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 So